Thank you very much, Tatiana. It's Saturday night, my friends, and you're with the Saturday Five. I'm Darren Grimes, and I can promise that you're in for a very lively show. Let's crack on with tonight's first debate. Which reprobate is going first?
I'm going to go first.
Oh, well, a reprobate indeed.
So, this week, Gérald Darmanin, I think that's how you say it, the French Interior Minister, said that the migrant crisis wasn't actually down to the increasingly ruthless smuggling gangs, but actually was a problem of Britain's own making, and I agree with him. He said that the lure of Britain's loosely regulated job market was acting as an economic magnet for migrants who knew that if they could just make it across that last stretch of water, they could work unregulated in this country even when they don't have the right papers. I would go further than Gérald, actually. Migrants sit in awful camps in Calais in tents, and they know that once they make it into a boat onto the water, they're going to be picked up by the Royal Navy, the RNLI, and they're going to be escorted gracefully to the UK, where they then will be transported to their warm, ensuite hotel room. They'll be given food, money, bicycles, travel cards, and healthcare and legal representation. They also know that they can just disappear off at any point and work in the black economy. Why wouldn't they come? And even if they are in the tiny minority that appeal their deportation when they get processed 3 times, so eventually the chances of them actually going is down to about 10%. Even if they are one of that 10% and they eventually feel the Home Office on their collar, they disappear off into the ether, they work on the black market, they form relationships, they have children, so when they do get picked up again, they can then look to the ECHR to protect their right to a family life in the UK. So yes, it's definitely our fault. We make it too easy, too comfy, and they know it across. This is what they're being told. What would I do? They would arrive in Dover, they would be fingerprinted and ID'd as far as we can, because of course they dump their documents. They would be driven in a comfy coach still, but this time to a locked detention centre where they get 3 meals a day, they're still warm, they still get healthcare, but they don't need pocket money, they don't need bicycles, they don't need travel cards. We would then process them, and when they get a no, eventually, they'll be then transported to the country that they should be in. That's my solution, and the French are right. What do you think, Darren?
Oh, well, absolutely. I think the issue is, right, once they get here, is 90% is the approval rate in this country.
It's crazy.
We, compared to, the people keep saying, oh, well, the French take so far more than we do. Well, that's by virtue of their being a massive, they're landlocked, right?
And they've got a big country.
A very big country, compared to our little island. And, of course, it is an island, so it's harder to get here, but people are still coming here. And ultimately, I'm afraid that I think the entire asylum and migration system is totally broken.
Totally.
And I think we need to stop migration until we get it sorted.
Yeah, I'd actually go one step further than Dr. Renee. I think the only deterrent is to send them back to Calais. I think we should get the boats and take them right back to Calais where they started and show this is a fool's errand. I know Keir Starmer's a lawyer and he thinks he's going to pull lots of legal levers to change illegal immigration. It's not going to work. We need a strong message that coming to this country illegally gets you sent back to whence you came from. And if we don't know the national origin, because, as you said, they throw their ID away, the only place we do know that they've come from is France, and that's where they should go.
But, Alex, in order to do that, what we really need is an agreement, a deal with France. And in order to do that, we need to have strong, positive, cordial, open channels of communication with our major European partners, and I'm afraid that
Why would the French ever agree?
Well, I think it's a challenge. It's a huge challenge.
But we've been giving far too many millions to France, and they're not stopping them coming over.
I think that's the key point, is that the administration we've had over the last 14 years of Conservative government, where they've made false promise after false promise and failed to deliver on every single aspect of this broken system.
Where did we take them? They landed in France first.
So the point
that is a safe country.
But the point that France make, Andy, and they're right, is the reason they come here is because they see us as a soft touch where they won't go back. They also get far more in benefits. Honestly, there is a migrant hotel near to my house where outside there are hundreds of brand new bikes. There are people coming and going all day.
I'd say two things to that. The first is that the French are always, just as we have been doing, they're always going to say things like this to score a few cheap political points. It's a vote winner. It's a good headline. So from a political standpoint, that's why he is saying this, I think.
What about the actuality?
On the actuality, what I don't like is, and there's no doubt that the system is not working. What I don't like is this suggestion or this perception that migrants are coming in here and having a right old, wonderful time and having great fun in these hotels. They're in many cases in really difficult situations. They've come from parts of the world where they're fleeing persecution in some places. Not always. No, it's not nonsense. Not in all cases.
Well, if they're coming to the UK, you're saying they're not having a wonderful time, but they're coming here deliberately. They go through multiple safe countries in the European Union where they are free from persecution. They have the best rights in the world in Europe, and they still take that extra risk to come to the UK. Then they get put up in five-star hotels.
They don't get put up in five-star hotels, Alex.
No,
they haven't.
Yes, they absolutely have been. And
in
my problem
five-star
is that we have
hotels.
homeless people, citizens of this country, British citizens, living on the street in complete desperation. I walked through Paddington train station last night and I couldn't believe how many homeless people were in the station. I could not believe it.
And in Hampshire, there are, of course, £1,400 a month flats which are being given to so-called asylum seekers, and we're not allowed to hear how much it's costing to furnish these establishments. There are so many ways in which this has just been totally covered up. The murder of Tom Roberts, the inquiry has been thrown back by the ECHR, Article 2, saying that actually they don't have a right because the British state did not know that there was a reasonable risk to life. He killed 2 people on the continent of Europe. And they tell us that there wasn't a risk to life.
But also, if he doesn't tell us who he is, we wouldn't know that anyway. But the other point is, I don't care if the hotel's 1-star or 2-star. It's warm, and they've got a roof over their shoulders. Whereas old people are going to die of the cold.
We should be putting them in hotels full stop at the British taxpayer. That's what I think.
I do think
we wouldn't go abroad illegally and actually get put up in a hotel. So
I think we've hit upon actually a potential solution here, which actually, and he's an unlikely source for a solution here, many of you might think, but Tony Blair this week has been saying what we need in this country is a digital ID. Because if we all had a digital ID...
The incarnates Tony Blair wants digital ID.
Well, that is a smart solution.
You know who's going to make hundreds of millions from digital ID?
Tony Blair.
That is a smart part of the solution. A digital ID, and then people could come in. Doesn't matter if they've dumped their documents, because guess what? They wouldn't have that ID, and then you know who is here, who isn't. That is a big part of the solution.
People have a smartphone and therefore they can't show their digital ID. The whole thing, they'll find excuses, and I'm afraid leftist politicians will be all too happy to take them.
You could almost think Tony Blair let them in so that he could bring in digital ID.
Well,
there you go.
But far more people came into Britain under the Conservatives than they did under Tony Blair.
That's true.
All right. I'm going to abuse the position of the chair and go next. Right. We're all going to go live to France shortly to actually cover protests kicking off there in the next hour, so stay tuned for that, because we'll be coming back to some of those themes. But today, folks, we are diving headfirst into the surreal world of political hypocrisy. Tony Blair, the man behind the WMD myth, the weapons of mass destruction that fueled the Iraq War, now wants to lecture us on misinformation. Hundreds of thousands of lives lost due to a lie, and now he's championing censorship. I tell you what, I've got an idea. We'll apply this censorship retrospectively. How about that, Tony? What would the penalty be for lying a nation into war?
I would prefer that the conventional media was the more powerful, because social media, it's, the truth of the matter is it's got many great aspects to it in terms of the way people interact with each other, but in politics it's a bit of a plague.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Tony. Are people online not sharing your beliefs? How terrible. That forked tongue was wagging all the way. And Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons, is pushing for tech giants to police our speech. In countries like Brazil and France, they're already pulling the plug on platforms like X and Telegram. This isn't about safety, it's about control. Because stick around, we're only just getting started.
I think the government have really got to think long and hard about what they're going to do with social media and what are they going to put through Parliament as a bill to act. And I believe it should be across. It doesn't matter what country you're in. The fact is that misinformation is dangerous.
That from the man who decided to take a Labour amendment, despite it being the SNP's day to actually choose the opposition day debate, in order to actually avoid people who are supporting, well, some pretty nefarious, horrible attacks on MPs in the name of supporting Palestine and all the rest of it. He said, well, I've got to choose a lighter amendment to avoid that happening. Is that not a form of disinformation in and of itself? The ultimate solution here, in my opinion, is that you only get progress towards truth when we allow the freedom to be wrong. Only then, with that freedom, can we actually advance towards what is right. So I think we've got to resist these clarion calls for censorship here at home. Britain must stand resolutely against it. Alex.
Well, I mean, I completely agree with you, Darren, but it seems, unfortunately, like that is the direction we're going to go in. Keir Starmer's already made some sort of statements around that.
And Brussels as well.
And Brussels.
And he's the little lapdog.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And, you know, they are losing control of commentary online. They see that as a threat to their power. And what happens when people are threatened is they start to legislate. For years, we've had social media free on the internet, but only since Elon Musk took over Twitter. Now they want to lock it up. Now they want to crack down on it. That never happened. In fact, before, when Twitter was run by the powers that be beforehand, the FBI and other Secret Service agents had back-end access so they could lock people up, and they censored people en masse.
Is the issue not that every totalitarian throughout the history of the world has used censorship as a form of coercion?
Yeah, they have, and I'm not in favour of that. But I think we have to recognise that the way certain elements of social media are working, or should I say not working at the moment, we do need to look at it. Misinformation is a massive problem, and it's only... And I'm not talking about people expressing views that other people don't like, because I think we all on this panel would agree that people online should be free to express themselves and wrong. But particularly with the advent of AI, which is getting more sophisticated by the day, deep fakes, we need to look at this because it could cause some serious problems.
Well, let me ask. Renee is a doctor. During the lockdowns, she was opposed to many things in the name of public health that were brought about. Would you, because this is what happened to people, would you censor her right to disagree with public health information?
No,
in the
because
name of disinformation.
No, because that is an opinion. But there are clearly no. But we can't banner every single point of view under opinion. There are objective truths in this. There are objective truths in this world, and that might not fall into that category.
What about the hope not hate guy? He seems to have got let off, didn't he?
I'm in favour of applying this even-handedly. What I'm saying, and I'm not. I don't know where you would draw the line, because this is incredibly complicated, right? It's really difficult. That's why no government in the world has cracked it yet. But what I don't think we can say is that social media platforms should be completely free of their responsibility to at least look at...
No, I think they should. So I'm going to butt in here, because I was even monitored by the government during COVID. I was on their misinformation list. I've done the SARs, and I saw how much they monitored me, because I was saying that children shouldn't have a vaccine. And I had very good reasons for that, and it turns out I was right. But anyway... My point about this is my misinformation then, somebody decided that was misinformation. It wasn't. It's about the definition of misinformation and who decides. It goes all the way back to Orwell and 1984. It's newspeak, it's what is misinformation, and I'm afraid we should be allowed to say anything to offend somebody. We shouldn't be allowed to incite hate or violence, but that's a very, very, very
The issue is as well, though, we cannot rely on traditional mainstream media to put the truth out there.
Yes.
It's only through, I mean, looking at during the riots on X, we saw some of the stuff not being reported, and I think it's important that we continue it.
Andy, who censors the censor?
Yeah, well, that's a perennial question in political philosophy. I get that. But what I'm saying is we cannot have a situation where social media companies have carte blanche to run these platforms in whichever way they like, so that misinformation in some cases can thrive. I'm afraid there are such things as objective truth.
Yeah,
well, the answer is it depends. I know that's not a satisfactory answer, but it's complicated.
Right, we'll have to leave that there.